Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea posts its biggest decline in jobs since the Asian financial crisis more than 20 years ago. Among the hardest hit were workers in hospitality, retail, and education. The government will be looking to create more than 500,000 jobs as soon as possible. Credit rating agency Moody's decides to keep its rating for South Korea at AA2, saying the local economy will fare better this year than others at that level. And a new group is launched at the United Nations to coordinate a global response to COVID-19. It was proposed by South Korea, which at the first meeting shared its know-how in fighting the pandemic. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. A new group has been launched at the UN for cooperation on the COVID-19 pandemic. It was proposed by South Korea, which at the first meeting on Tuesday shared its know-how in fighting the disease. Oh Jung-hee files this report from Seoul's Foreign Ministry.
Around 200 ministers, high-level UN officials, and medical experts sat down for a video conference on Tuesday morning Eastern Time to mark the launch of a new UN group. The establishment of the Group of Friends of Solidarity for Global Health Security was led by South Korea to further enhance international cooperation on health security challenges, including the current COVID-19 crisis.
Korea was one of the first countries to be hit by COVID-19, and we felt the need for, and thus proposed, the launch of this Group of Friends of Solidarity for Global Health Security. We hope the discussions will be action-oriented, pragmatic, and adaptive to the changing situation.
The group is to be co-chaired by 5 countries: South Korea, Canada, Denmark, Qatar, and Sierra Leone, and it's open to other UN member states. At their first conference on Tuesday, South Korea once again shared how it contained the coronavirus based on openness and transparency. The participants gave a positive evaluation of Seoul's leadership and agreed on the need to work together to minimize COVID-19's impact on peace, security, and human rights.
We can see again the clear relationship between global health security and strong and resilient health systems with universal health coverage. In order to curb an outbreak at a time when the pandemic has exacerbated existing inequalities and left many financially insecure, the entire population must be able to access necessary testing, treatment, and care.
Leading global efforts to fight the coronavirus and other health security issues that might arise in the future, the UN group will hold regular meetings and expert briefings to share experience and know-how. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea has been sending medical supplies to UN veterans of the Korean War around the world to help protect them against COVID-19. Seoul's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs said Wednesday that it received a thank you letter from the U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie, for South Korea's recent donation of 500,000 face masks for American veterans. The Moon administration has also sent COVID-19 test kits to Ethiopia for its veterans, along with items like face masks and hand sanitizer. The South Korean Veterans Ministry said it plans to send more face masks soon to other Korean War veterans from 22 countries. Senior defense officials from South Korea, the U.S., and Japan held a video conference Wednesday to discuss collaborating on a response to COVID-19, as well as the nuclear and missile threats posed by North Korea. The 12th annual defense trilateral talks were initially scheduled to take place in Japan, but because of the pandemic were held online. Seoul's Deputy Defense Minister Jung Seok-hwan and his U.S. and Japanese counterparts reaffirmed the importance of trilateral cooperation in upholding security. They agreed to meet again online at a later date. The number of people employed in South Korea fell last month by the most since 1999. The losses, of course, were concentrated in businesses that are face-to-face, like hospitality. Kim Jae-hee has the details.
South Korea saw the biggest number of job losses in more than 2 decades last month due to the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of employed people in the nation was around 26.6 million. This is down 476,000 from the same month the year before and the steepest loss since February 1999, when jobs were down 658,000 in the aftermath of the financial crisis. The employment rate for those between 15 and 64 years old was around 65.1% last month, down 1.4 percentage points on year. The job market was particularly tough for young people. The 15 to 29 age bracket saw the employment rate drop by 2 percentage points on year to 40.9%. Job losses were mostly from service industries, which require face-to-face interaction. The restaurant and lodging sectors saw 212,000 job losses compared to last year, and the education sector lost 130,000 jobs on year. The wholesale and retail sector saw 123,000 job losses. An expert in the field said there's a possibility the job market may further contract and said the government should be focused on reviving industries hit hardest by the pandemic.
It is expected that the negative effect upon employment will increase to a certain extent on the month of May and possibly June. The first thing is government's reaction has to be focused upon certain industries. And second thing is government has to be very active in preventing future unemployment.
Amid the grim figures, the South Korean government will hold an emergency economic meetings on Thursday this week and next week and discuss ways to create more than 550,000 jobs as early as possible. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is making the first payments today of the COVID-19 emergency relief funds. Those getting the deposits today are people who applied on Monday when applications started. The payments will come in the form of points on your credit or debit card. Others applying throughout this week will get theirs on a rolling basis. It's hoped that the money will help boost consumer spending amid the outbreak. It needs to be spent by August 13th, otherwise it'll be donated to support those who lost their jobs or have been put on unpaid leave. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, we now see that Korea lost more jobs last month than it has in any month since 1999 in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis. What's the significance of this, and what needs to be done in your view?
Okay, well, at least apparently the strange thing is unemployment rate did not rise by much. It only rose by 0.2 percentage point to 4.2%. But the employment rate, which is the number of people employed divided by the working population, it fell considerably by 1.4 percentage point to 59.4%. So and if we look at the economically active population, that provides an explanation. Economically active population fell by 550,000 people. So 550,000 people either were too discouraged to look for jobs, or they voluntarily went out of the labor market because perhaps they were scared of catching the coronavirus when they went to work. So we do have a very large amount of job losses. Some of that came voluntarily, some of it did not. We also have a very large number of people who are technically not unemployed, but they are temporarily on leave. In March, that number was 1.6 million, but in April, that number fell to 1.1 million, but it's still very, very high. It's next to last month's figures, it's at historically high. The industries that lost jobs, as it was mentioned in the previous story, were mostly service-related jobs, and that's probably going to continue until part of May. But I expect some recovery in these service industries because, well, we went from social distancing to everyday life warning about distancing. So there's going to be more economic activity in the service sector as the economy is a bit freed up. But now the problem is going to come from manufacturing and export industries because, well, we've seen that the April export numbers were terrible. It fell by 24.2%. So the focus of unemployment is going to start shifting to manufacturing and exports from now on. What can we do about this? Well, giving everybody some money was part of that solution, but we've seen in Europe that a lot of governments are subsidizing part of pay for companies, small and medium-sized companies. Korea is already doing this, but not necessarily for the people who are put out of jobs because of the coronavirus, but perhaps we could start expanding the program into that area. The more people who are unemployed now will make it more difficult to have a quick recovery in the future.
Right. Well, Professor Young, stocks on Wall Street overnight were down because of concerns over the tensions rising between the U.S. and China. The NASDAQ, in particular, down sharply for the first time in a while. What's the story in the global markets?
Okay, well, the U.S. market had a very bad week, Monday and Tuesday. The Dow fell by 1.89%, S&P fell by 2.05%, NASDAQ fell by 2.06% yesterday. And there's three big reasons. One is that the unemployment figures came out at the end of last week, and they're historically very high. The only time it was higher was during the 1930 to 1929 Great Depression. And then the U.S. Center for Disease Control gave testimony to U.S. Congress, and they contradict what President Trump has been saying. If they removed the lockdown and shutdown of the United States economy too early, you will see a increase in the coronavirus. So that is starting to worry a lot of investors. And then there's concern about Federal Reserve. They made some extraordinary moves to help the American economy deal with the coronavirus, but the market seems to want more and more. They may be getting too dependent on the money that's being put out by the Fed, and they're beginning to get a bit afraid that perhaps Fed is starting to run out of tools to give additional stimulus to the economy. But next, other than the United States, the other stock market seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern. China, the stock market was level this week. Hong Kong was dropping. Euro 50 was about level. FTSE went up. So other than the United States, the global market seems to be in sort of a holding pattern.
Right. And briefly, Professor, Korean stocks did manage to recover today, closing in higher territory. Tell us about the local markets.
Okay, well, KOSPI seems to be like the other global market. It seems to be in a holding pattern. KOSDAQ, however, is doing amazingly well. KOSDAQ is outperforming NASDAQ of the United States. It's almost recovered to the level that we saw before the coronavirus hit in mid-February. So KOSDAQ is doing amazingly well. Part of the reason seems to be that Korean individual stock investors are buying not only KOSDAQ stocks, but also KOSPI bonds. But especially for KOSDAQ, the IT industry did actually fairly well during the first quarter because United States and Europe, during their lockdowns and shutdowns, they did buy a lot of IT equipment because they had to stay at home, do their work from home, and watch a lot of videos over their computers and such. And there might be some hope that the Korean biotech industry will pick up because, well, because of how Korea dealt with the coronavirus, the biotech industry seems to be doing very well. The testing kits for coronavirus seems to be doing very well. So there may be that hope, but it's been amazing how KOSDAQ is recovering from the shock that we had from the coronavirus.
Yes, indeed. All right, Professor Young, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights today. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Now, the global credit rating agency Moody's has decided to keep its rating for South Korea at AA2. The agency says the impact on South Korea's economy from the pandemic will be smaller than on other countries with similar credit ratings. It said South Korea should have relatively robust growth potential, citing its strong governance as well as its effective fiscal and monetary management of shocks. Moody's has kept South Korea's rating at AA2, the third highest on its scale since 2015, when it was upgraded from AA3. That brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.